Until this point, we learned how to use the prefix sum array to solve the problem static range sum queries. And now let's practice on these two problems. Let's see the first one. Given an array of an integer, it's a problem from CSES Online Judge. Given an array of n integers, your task is to process q queries of the form: what's the XOR sum of values in range AB inclusive? The first input line has two integers, n and q, where n is the number of values and q the number of queries. The second line has n integers, the array values. Finally, there are q lines describing the queries. Each line has two integers, a and b. What's the XOR sum of values in range AB? The output is the result of each query. Here are the constraints, and here are this is an example here. Okay, let's take this to VS Code. Let's code it from scratch. Let's include the library here. Let's see. First, we read n and the q, the array size, the input, the original array size, and the number of queries. Let's read them. Now, let's read the values of the original array. Of course, guys, we're going to use the prefix sum array or the prefix XOR sum array here. So we have to build it here. Let's call it new. The size, as you know, is n+1. If you forget what's the prefix sum array, or you forget all the stuff that we have seen in the previous video, you can come back to the previous video and see all this new stuff. Okay, we're going to store the XOR sums in the prefix array. Pre of 0 is equal to 0, because a number XOR 0, it remains that number itself, will not change. Now pre of I is equal pre of I minus 1 XOR V. Now let's iterate over the queries. We have a Q query here, two queries. We can start from 1, same here. I'll start from 0. Okay. Now we're going to have to read. The left boundary and the right boundary, the range, as long. Here to change this to long 2, and this one here, and this one here. Okay. Then we output the answer, which is the answer is 3 at index r plus 1 xr, not plus, because we want the xr sum queries, 3 over l. Of course r minus 1, because we use here the zero based indexing, and the problem statement r and l are one base index. Okay, and now we display the answer. We delete the pointer of the array, and the return of the main program obtained success. Exit success here, 0. I think all is done. Let's test it here. Okay, let's submit it. This one, submit. As you see, it's accepted from the first try here. We use the prefix XOR sum array to resolve this problem in O1. Here, the time complexity of this expression or this query range is O1, the constant time. The whole time complexity of the code is OQ. This is the time complexity, whole time complexity here. Time complexity. And of course, here we do not have an extra space, because we didn't use the input array. When we do not have two arrays here, just one, the pre-array. It will replace, we can say, the input array, because we code this from scratch. So the space complexity is ON. Also, there is no extra space complexity. Here, just this one. Whole space complexity is ON. We can bring this here. I think it's better. Okay. Of course, to build the array, we have build prefix sum array. Time complexity is in O of n time complexity. Okay. This is the first problem here. Let's go to the second. This is the problem 303 from LeetCode. I can use VS Code directly here, because I use an extension called LeetCode. You can install it in your VS Code editor to use LeetCode directly in VS Code. So we can search here the problem, search problem 303, this one. Here use C++. Okay, let's repeat this. Okay. Given an integer array names have handle multiple queries of the following type. Calculate the sum of the elements on names between indices left and right, inclusive where left is less or equal to right. Implement the name array class. We have a class here to implement. It's not the same as the previous as the CSES online judge. We have to complete only these two functions here. So in this class, we have to complete the name array, the constructor of this class here, the name array. It takes as parameter the input array or the original array called names here. It will initialize the object with the integer array names, and the function sum range. It will compute the sum in this range from left to right, from position left to position right, inclusive. I think it's inclusive. Okay, inclusive. Okay. It's a little bit different here to use a class here, but the concept is remain the same. We're going to use the prefix sum array to compute the range query in constant time. So we're going to build the prefix array sum. Prefix sum array here in the construct. How do you going to use this? First, I have to declare an attribute here for the class. Let's use vector in this time. Let's use vector. It's type in C++. Let's call it pre. And here we want to say say pre pushback because 0, and then run over the. Here we're going to use an extra space because this array, names array, the integer array, is already filled in this problem. We're going to use it from this class. Okay. Let's say pre. If you are not familiar with the vector here, vector in C++, you can use a static array or a dynamic array using a pointer. Pushback what? Pre dot back plus names of I. We don't have n here. Let's initialize. N is the size of the original array. Okay. This is the constructor will initialize the prefix sum array and will fill it. And now in this function we going to return only the value as we have seen in the previous video, +1. As we have seen in the previous video, okay, right, +1 minus pre at left. I think all is done. Let's try it on the test case. Null 1 minus 1 minus 3. I think it's okay. Let's submit it. Okay, it's accepted as you see. The concept remains the same. We use a prefix array to store the sums from 0 to a given position in that array, as we have seen in the previous video. And we go on to query using this formula. If you forget all this stuff, you can come back to the previous video and see the proof of correctness of this all stuff.